Now, the U.S. has paused a shipment of bombs to Israel last week over concerns about a looming invasion of Rafah. That is according to a senior administration official who adds the shipment was supposed to contain around 3,500 bombs. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have taken control of the Rafah border crossing for the first time since the fighting began in October. When it comes to ceasefire talks, the Biden administration believes Israel and Hamas should be able to resolve their differences. Bloomberg's Middle East and Africa economy and government editor Paul Wallace joins us once more. So let us just talk about the developments in Rafah overnight. What we know is that Israel has taken control of the border crossing in Rafah, but it seems that they've stopped short of the full ground offensive that had been talked about the last couple of months.
Hi, Joumanna. Exactly. So far, that's as far as Israeli troops have gone. They seem to face little resistance yesterday morning when they went in and took over the crossing. They said they were acting on specific intelligence. They accused Hamas of carrying out what they called terrorist operations through that crossing, which is the main point of entry for aid into Gaza and sits on the border between Egypt and the Palestinian territory. But so far, Israeli troops have not gone into the rest of the city. Israel's government continues to say that it will launch an assault there because it says that several thousand Hamas fighters are in the city, but that it will allow civilians to leave beforehand. There are more than 1 million in the city, maybe 1.4 million. They fled there, most of them to seek refuge from the war when it started in October. Almost the entire rest of the world, including the US, has grave concerns about any assault, and few people think it's feasible to get civilians out in a safe manner and quickly. But Israel says that it's got a plan to do just that.
Well, reports saying that around 100,000 people have already been moved close to the border crossing. But of course, the big question is about that other 1 million plus still in Rafah. What has been the response from the international community? And I think it's interesting to note these comments from senior officials in the U.S. government saying that they actually had suspended the supply of bombs to Israel throughout the course of last week in anticipation of this potential ground offensive. So that tells you that the U.S. isn't fully on board.
It certainly does speak to how concerned the U.S. is. The U.S.'s official position is not that no offensive on Rafah can take place at all, but that it cannot take place until the civilians have moved out. However, in reality, it's clear the White House and Joe Biden himself don't think that's possible, and thus there shouldn't be an assault of any kind on the city. I think these reports we're hearing about the delays in shipments of offensive weapons speak to the tensions that have just been growing and growing between Israel and the US over the last few months. The EU's come out, its foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, he said that the EU had made pretty clear to Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, that an offense on Rafah should not take place. As far as he was concerned, what we've seen in the last few days is the start of that assault. So he's saying it's already begun. Israel is downplaying that and saying, no, this is not an assault on Rafah. It's a very limited operation so far.